I am Joshua, 32, and my own brother uninvited me from the wedding I planned and paid for. Before I tell you about how their perfect day collapsed live in their group chats, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I was sitting in seat 4A, business class, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. The flight attendant had just handed me a glass of champagne. The condensation beaded on the crystal, and the soft hum of the Boeing 777 engines vibrated through the floorboards. I took a slow sip, tasted like absolute freedom. I looked down at my phone resting on the tray table. It was strictly on airplane mode. I knew exactly what was happening back home right at that very second. I knew because I had set the timer on the bomb, walked away, and locked the doors behind me. Back in the States, it was Sunday afternoon. The exact hour the string quartet was supposed to start playing Canon in D at the Riverside estate. The exact hour my brother Landon and his beautiful bride Victoria were supposed to make their grand entrance to a crowd of 200 adoring guests. Instead, I knew for a fact that they were standing in an empty, silent venue, frantically screaming at caterers who would never arrive, surrounded by floral stands that held absolutely nothing but bare wire and crushed dreams. I leaned my head against the cool window pane and watched the clouds roll by. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I just felt completely, wonderfully numb. But getting to this point, to the point where you can coldly dismantle your own flesh and blood's happiest day, doesn't happen overnight. Takes a lifetime of conditioning. Takes a lifetime of being treated like a stepping stone. To understand why I pressed the detonator, you have to understand the cafe. I kept replaying that moment in my head. The smell of roasted coffee beans, the jazz music playing softly from the overhead speakers, and my brother sitting across from me, not even looking me in the eye as he delivered the ultimate betrayal. He actually thought I would just take it. He thought I would nod, smile, open my wallet, and disappear into the shadows so he could shine. Little did I know at that cafe, the rabbit hole of their deception went far deeper than a simple guest list change. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this disaster really started. Let me tell you how a younger brother, who spent his entire life trying to buy his family's love, ended up becoming their absolute worst nightmare. If you looked at our family photos growing up, you would instantly know the dynamic. Landon was always in the center, sporting a bright, confident smile, usually holding a trophy he barely practiced for. I was always off to the side, half blinking, holding his jacket. That was the established order. Landon was the golden child. I was the reliable one. In our household, reliable was just another word for invisible. When it came time for college, my parents somehow managed to drain the entire college fund they had set up just to send Landon to a private university out of state. He spent 4 years majoring in frat parties and minor property damage. I stayed home, went to community college, and worked double shifts at a catering company to pay my own way. I never complained. Whenever things went wrong, I was the one fixing them. The inequality didn't stop at tuition. When my grandfather passed away, it was a chaotic time for our family. The funeral was scheduled for a crisp Tuesday morning. Landon showed up 2 hours late, reeking of alcohol from a bender the night before, and made a massive scene at the back of the church. My parents spent the whole time comforting him because he was grieving so hard. Meanwhile, I was the one who met with the director, paid the undertaker, coordinated the catering for the wake, and drove my grandmother home in the rain. When the will was read, a small inheritance was left behind. My parents somehow convinced everyone that Landon needed it more to find his footing. I didn't see a dime, but my relentless work ethic eventually paid off. By the time I hit 30, I had built a serious career. I was a senior event and wedding planner at one of the top firms in the city. I handled massive corporate galas, high society weddings, and events with budgets that would make your head spin. I was good at it. Vendors respected me. Venues gave me rock-bottom rates because they knew my events ran like clockwork, and my clients loved me. Then came the meeting that should have been the happiest day of my professional life. My boss called me into her office, poured 2 cups of coffee, and offered me a massive promotion. Director of European Events, based out of our London office. It came with a full relocation package, a generous housing allowance, and a salary that finally meant I never had to worry about money again. It was the absolute dream. But instead of popping champagne, I felt a heavy knot form in my stomach. I knew exactly how my parents would react. They would guilt-trip me. They would say I was abandoning the family. They would make my success about their suffering, claiming I was leaving them to handle everything alone. I decided to hold off on telling them for a few weeks. I wanted to find the perfect moment. That moment never came, because 2 days later, Landon called a mandatory family dinner at an upscale local steakhouse. He brought his fiancée, Victoria. Victoria came from a wealthy family, or at least a family that pretended to be extremely wealthy. They cared deeply about country club memberships, zip codes, and maintaining appearances. Over dry-aged steaks and expensive wine that I inevitably ended up paying for, Landon dropped the news. They had picked a date. They had picked a venue. They had a massive vision for a magnificent, elegant wedding. "There's just one small roadblock," Landon said, swishing his wine glass. He looked at my parents, then slowly shifted his gaze to me. "Victoria's parents are contributing what they can, but times are tight right now. We crunched the numbers with a planner last week. Our dream wedding is going to cost around $38,000. We only have $11,000 saved in our joint account." Silence fell over the table. $27,000 short. Landon didn't ask me directly. He never asks directly. He just paints a picture of his own tragedy and waits for someone else to pick up the brush. My mother sighed heavily, looking at me with those wide, pleading eyes. "Oh, Joshua, such a shame. They might have to wait 2 or 3 years to get married. If only we had the resources. You know, your brother has been so stressed lately. And Victoria's family, well, we can't let them think we aren't supportive of this union." The manipulation was thick, but I was so used to breathing it in that it just felt like normal air to me. I sat there, looking at my brother's pathetic, expectant face, and my mother's demanding gaze. The guilt of my secret London promotion suddenly weighed on my chest like an anvil. I thought, irrationally, that if I gave them this one massive gift, if I gave Landon his perfect day, it would buy my freedom. It would prove my love once and for all. When I finally announced I was moving across the ocean, they wouldn't be able to call me selfish. They would have to let me go with a blessing. I took a deep breath. "I'll do it," I said. Landon blinked, pretending to be surprised. "Do what?" "I'll plan the wedding, my gift to you both, and I will cover the shortfall. I'll pay for the rest of it." Victoria actually shrieked, knocking over her water glass in excitement. She reached across the table and grabbed my hands. Landon grinned so hard I thought his face would split. My mother teared up, reaching over to pat my cheek. "I knew you were a good boy, Joshua. I knew you wouldn't let your brother down," my mother said, wiping a tear from her eye. For a few fleeting hours I felt like the hero. I felt the warmth of my family's approval radiating toward me. It was intoxicating. I was the savior. But looking back, I realized that giving a parasite more blood doesn't make it love you. It just makes it hungrier. For the next 4 months, I worked my fingers to the bone. I was working my 60-hour-a-week corporate job, finalizing the details of my London transfer in secret, and planning a masterpiece of a wedding on my nights and weekends. I leveraged every single professional favor I had built over 7 years. I secured the Riverside estate, a stunning waterfront venue that normally had a 2-year waiting list. I got my favorite florist, Simone, to do premium orchids and imported roses at a fraction of the cost. I booked an incredible catering team, a top-tier photographer, and a live band. Because I was using my professional network, every single contract was in my name. The venue agreement, Joshua. The catering deposit, Joshua's business account. The floral retainer, my name, my signature, my liability. Victoria and Landon just had to point at pictures on Pinterest, and I made it happen. The total cost came out to exactly $37,000. After their $11,000, I poured $26,000 of my own hard-earned money into their dream. Things were perfect until we hit the 3-week mark before the wedding. Suddenly, the text messages stopped. When I asked Victoria to confirm the seating chart, she left me on read. When I asked Landon about the final headcount for the rehearsal dinner, he gave vague, one-word answers. They canceled our final walkthrough at the venue. I chalked it up to pre-wedding jitters. Normal stress. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Landon texted me. Need to talk. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th. Important. I walked into the cafe expecting a crisis about the groomsmen's suits or a dietary restriction for a VIP guest. Landon was sitting at a corner table. He didn't stand up when I approached. He didn't even smile. He just stared at his coffee cup, looking uncomfortable but strangely defiant. "What's going on?" I asked, sliding into the booth across from him. He took a slow breath, looking everywhere but my face. "So, Victoria's parents are getting really anxious. They're very traditional. They care a lot about optics in their social circle." "Okay," I said slowly, confused. And they've been asking questions about you, about your role in all this." He finally looked up, and I saw a flash of irritation in his eyes, as if I were the one inconveniencing him. "We told them that you're just too busy with work. We told them you probably couldn't make the wedding at all. We told them we were handling and paying for everything ourselves." My brain stuttered. I felt the air leave my lungs. "You told them you paid for it?" "We had to, Josh. Her parents judge everything. If they found out my little brother was bankrolling my wedding, I'd look like a loser. Victoria would be mortified." "So you lied to them about me?" I said, my voice dropping dangerously low. "We managed expectations," Landon corrected smoothly, waving his hand as if brushing away a fly. "And now we need you to not be there, so the story holds up." The cafe around me seemed to go completely silent. The clinking of mugs, the espresso machine, the chatter all faded away. I stared at him. "You want me to skip your wedding? If you're there, in the photos, getting thanked in speeches, someone is going to mention that you planned it. Someone will mention you paid for it. The whole illusion falls apart. We just need you to stay home that day. You get it, right?" My jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. A vein throbbed in my temple. "I paid $26,000 for this wedding, Landon. I spent 4 months planning it." Landon rolled his eyes, letting out an exasperated sigh. "Can you not make this about you for once? This is our day. Just do this one thing for us." I stood up without another word. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. I just walked out into the rain. When I got to my car, my phone rang. It was my mother. Landon had already called her to do damage control. "Joshua, please don't be difficult." My mother sighed into the receiver. Landon explained the situation. "You know how Victoria's parents are. You have to understand. Family is about compromise." "Compromise?" I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. "He uninvited me to the wedding I bought for him. He's protecting his new family's image." She snapped back, her tone turning ice cold. "You're single. You don't understand the pressure. Stop being so selfish and let your brother have his moment in peace." I hung up on her. I sat in my car for an hour, watching the rain hit the windshield. That was it. That was the exact moment the cord snapped. I wasn't a brother. I wasn't a son. I was an ATM machine that they wanted to hide in the closet when company came over. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came the next morning. I received a phone call from an unknown number. "Hello, Joshua? This is Eleanor, Victoria's mother." I froze in my kitchen. "Hello, Eleanor. I just wanted to call and say how grateful we are that you're being so accommodating about the guest list," she said, her voice dripping with fake, sugary sweetness. "Victoria was in tears last night. She was so worried you would insist on coming and ruin the aesthetic of the family photos. She told me you have a bit of a loud personality. It's so gracious of you to step aside so her perfect day isn't overshadowed by any awkwardness." My blood ran completely cold. It wasn't just about the money. Victoria actively despised me. She thought I was an embarrassment. And Landon agreed with her. They had spun a web of lies so thick that I was now the villain in their fairy tale. "You're very welcome, Eleanor," I said, my voice dead calm. "It's going to be a day nobody ever forgets." I didn't confront them. Confrontation implies you want a resolution, and I was far past wanting to resolve anything. I went back to my apartment and called the only person in the family who possessed an ounce of sanity. My cousin Carter. Carter lived 2 states away and had distanced himself from our toxic family dynamics years ago. When I laid out the entire story, from the cafe to the phone call with Eleanor, the line went dead silent for a full 30 seconds. "Tell me you're not going to take this," Carter finally said, his voice laced with pure disgust. "I'm not." "Good. Burn it to the ground, Josh. Burn it all down." That night, I opened my laptop. I pulled up the job offer from London. I signed the contract digitally, attached my relocation forms, and emailed it back to the HR director. My start date was in exactly 1 month. Next, I opened a new tab and booked a one-way, non-refundable business class ticket to Tokyo, departing at 8 p.m. on the Friday before the wedding. Then I did the most important work. I opened the master folder on my desktop labeled Landon and Victoria Wedding. I pulled up every single PDF contract. I read the fine print on the venue agreement, the catering contract, the floral retainer, the photography deal. I had even had a lawyer friend review my standard vendor templates years ago. In the event planning world, cancellation policies are brutal. If you cancel within 48 hours of an event, you don't just lose your deposit. You are liable for severe penalties. But there was a standard clause in every single contract I had drafted. A clause that is industry standard to protect vendors from warring families. Only the primary contract holder has the authority to make changes, alter dates, or cancel services. My name was at the top of every single page. I was the primary contract holder. Landon and Victoria had zero legal authority over their own wedding. For the next 2 weeks, I played the perfect, compliant ghost. When Landon texted me asking if I could coordinate a last-minute change to the cocktail menu, I replied, "Sure thing. I'll handle it." When Victoria's mother emailed me demanding to know the exact shade of the napkins, I sent her a polite color swatch. I organized my files. I packed up my apartment. I sold my car. I watched them post on social media about how blessed they were to be putting together this incredible wedding all by themselves. I let them climb all the way to the top of their pedestal. I just made sure I had a firm grip on the ladder. Friday morning arrived. The wedding was 48 hours away. My flight to Tokyo was in 12 hours. I woke up at 6 a.m., made a pot of black coffee, and sat at my kitchen island with my laptop and my phone. I had a list of 14 vendors. At exactly 8 a.m., I made the first call. "Riverside Estate. This is Sarah." "Hey Sarah, it's Joshua. I need to trigger a full cancellation for the event this Sunday." There was a long pause on the line. "Joshua? You're joking, right? The wedding is in 2 days. The tents are scheduled to go up this afternoon." "I'm completely serious. Cancel it. I am the primary contract holder. I am authorizing a hard stop on all services. Josh, you're going to lose the $10,000 venue fee, plus a penalty for late notice. You're looking at a total loss of over 12 grand just with us." "Process it," I said without blinking. "And Sarah, if anyone else calls trying to reinstate it, you are legally bound not to engage. The contract is terminated." "Understood," she said, her voice hushed. "Consider it done." I hung up and moved down the list. I called the caterer. I canceled enough filet mignon and roasted asparagus to feed 200 people. I lost the $8,000 deposit. I called the florist. I canceled $10,000 worth of imported orchids. I called the band. I called the photographer. I called the rental company bringing the chairs and linens. I called the company providing the lighting. With every call, I lost thousands of dollars. By 11 a.m., I had effectively set fire to $25,000 of my own money. It was the price of my dignity, and I paid it gladly. At 4 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Landon. "Hey, Sarah at the venue isn't returning my calls about the rehearsal time. Can you ping her? I swiped the notification away, grabbed my suitcase, and took an Uber to the airport. At 7:30 p.m., as I was boarding my flight to Tokyo, my phone started ringing. It was Landon, then my mother, then Landon again, then Victoria. The bomb had detonated. I smiled, switched my phone to airplane mode, and handed my boarding pass to the flight attendant. I spent the entire weekend blissfully exploring the neon streets of Shinjuku and eating the best sushi of my life. I didn't turn my phone on once. It wasn't until Monday morning in Tokyo, which was Sunday night back in the States, that I finally connected to the hotel Wi-Fi and called Carter for the debrief. "You magnificent bastard." Carter laughed the second he picked up. "You actually did it. Give me the play-by-play," I said, looking out over the Tokyo skyline. Carter took a deep breath. "Okay, so Friday night, Landon realizes the venue is canceled. He calls Sarah, screaming at her. She tells him the contract holder terminated the agreement, and she legally cannot let them on the property. He spends all of Saturday panicking, trying to find a park, a backyard, anything. But you canceled the food. You canceled the chairs. They had nothing. "So what happened today?" I asked, my heart beating a little faster. "Today was the masterpiece," Carter said. "Landon and Victoria didn't have time to contact all 200 guests. So at 3 p.m. today, people started showing up at the Riverside estate in their Sunday best. But the gates were locked. Sarah and the security guards were out front. Here is the twist that made every lost dollar worth it. Victoria's parents show up," Carter continued, his voice trembling with excitement. "Eleanor is having a meltdown in the parking lot. She demands to speak to the manager. Sarah comes out with the clipboard. Eleanor starts screaming that they paid for this venue and they demand entry. And Sarah, bless her heart, Sarah pulls out the contract. I closed my eyes, savoring the image. Sarah looks Eleanor dead in the eye and says, 'Ma'am, Landon and Victoria didn't pay for this venue. Joshua signed this contract. Joshua paid every single invoice from his corporate account. And Joshua canceled it.' Eleanor turned around and looked at Landon. The lie completely exploded. All the guests, all the country club friends, they all heard it. They all realized Landon and Victoria were broke liars who tried to steal credit from you. The wedding was destroyed. Their reputation was in tatters. They ended up driving to the courthouse in total silence, signing a paper, and going home. This is a moment that changed everything. When I finally regained control of my life. Thank you for your patience in getting this far. You are amazing. Please like the video and leave a comment below to let me know you've been with me. This will not only help more people find this story, but also let me know that my experiences are meaningful to someone. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of this journey. I spent a week in Japan, letting the fallout settle across the ocean. My phone was a graveyard of unhinged text messages and voicemails. "How could you do this?" My mother texted. "You ruined your brother's life. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. You owe me 25 grand. Landon wrote. "I'm getting a lawyer. I'll sue you for emotional distress." I read them all from a hot spring in Hakone, feeling absolutely nothing but a profound sense of peace. The poison was finally leaving my system. When I flew back to the States, I knew they would be waiting. I took a cab straight from the airport to my apartment building. As the car pulled up, I saw them. My mother, my father, and Landon were standing on the sidewalk by the main entrance. Landon looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His suit was wrinkled, and he looked furious. As soon as I stepped out of the cab, they swarmed me. "You psychopath!" Landon screamed, lunging forward. My father grabbed his arm to hold him back. "You destroyed my wedding. You made me look like a fool." "No, Landon," I said, my voice shockingly calm. "You made yourself look like a fool when you lied to your rich in-laws to massage your own ego." My mother pushed her way forward, tears streaming down her face. "Joshua, how could you? We are family. You humiliated us. Victoria's parents won't even speak to us. They want an annulment." That sounds like a custody issue for a divorce lawyer down the road, I replied, grabbing my suitcase. Now, get out of my way. I pushed past them and unlocked the glass lobby door. Landon grabbed the door frame, wedging his foot in so it couldn't close. You owe me $25,000, he spat, a vein bulging in his forehead. You canceled contracts. I'm taking you to court. I stopped and looked him dead in the eye. Take me to court for what, Landon? Canceling contracts that had my name on them? Refunding money to my own bank account? You didn't lose $25,000 because you didn't pay a single dime. I lost that money, and it was worth every penny to watch you get exactly what you deserve. His jaw dropped. He had no counter-argument because he knew I was legally bulletproof. I'm moving to London in 3 days, I said, staring at my parents. I am done being your bank. I am done being your scapegoat. If any of you ever contact me again, if you try to step foot on my property, I will have you arrested for trespassing and harassment. I kicked Landon's shoe out of the door frame. He stumbled back, shocked. I slammed the heavy glass door shut, the magnetic lock clicking into place with a loud, satisfying thud. I stood in the lobby and watched them through the glass. They looked small. They looked pathetic. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to fix their problems. I walked to the elevator, went up to my empty apartment, and blocked their numbers. I spent my last 3 days in America living out of cardboard boxes. My apartment was completely bare, echoing with every step I took. The silence in those empty rooms was heavy, but for the first time in my 32 years of life, it wasn't an anxious silence. It was the silence of a clean slate. I had survived the fallout of the canceled wedding. I had survived the shouting in my lobby. I was finally getting out. I was taping up the final box containing my winter coats, listening to the sharp, tearing sound of the packing tape, when my cell phone rang. I glanced at the screen. The caller ID showed an international number from London. I immediately assumed it was my new company's human resources department calling to confirm my flight itinerary or double-check some final visa paperwork. I wiped the dust off my hands and picked it up. Hello, this is Joshua. Hi, Joshua. This is Mr. Sterling, the director of HR here at the London office. Do you have a moment? His voice was entirely professional, clipped, and deeply serious. There was a tight, careful edge to his tone that immediately made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I had been in the corporate world long enough to know that when the head of HR calls you directly with that specific tone of voice, it is never just to say a friendly hello. It usually means something is horribly wrong. Of course, Mr. Sterling. What can I help you with? I asked, my heart rate picking up slightly. I wanted to speak with you directly before you board your flight on Friday, Mr. Sterling continued smoothly, though I could hear the faint sound of him typing on a keyboard in the background. We received a very concerning phone call this morning on our end. A man claiming to be your father contacted our global switchboard. He was quite aggressive, quite persistent, and eventually he escalated the call all the way to my desk. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. I gripped the edge of my kitchen counter so hard my knuckles turned white. My father called you? Yes, Mr. Sterling said. He told me that he was calling out of deep, urgent concern for your well-being. He claimed that the pressure of your new promotion, combined with the sudden increase in your salary, had triggered a severe mental breakdown. He stated that you were currently exhibiting erratic, highly destructive behavior. He specifically mentioned that you had recently sabotaged a major family event in a fit of delusion, causing thousands of dollars in damages, and that you were entirely unfit to relocate overseas or handle corporate responsibilities. I stopped breathing. I stared at the blank white wall of my kitchen, feeling a wave of nausea wash over me. He actually suggested, Mr. Sterling added, his voice dropping an octave, that we revoke your employment offer immediately for the safety of our company and require you to stay in America to seek psychiatric help. My own father, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, the man who sat at the head of our dinner table every Thanksgiving. He didn't just want me to apologize for ruining Landon's wedding. He wanted to destroy my livelihood. He wanted to strip away my promotion, my salary, my reputation, and my only escape route, just to force me back under their control. He was willing to ruin my entire professional career, a career I built with my own 2 hands, to punish me for standing up to his golden child. He wanted me broke and desperate so I would have no choice but to crawl back. "Joshua, are you still there?" "I'm here," I managed to say. My voice shook, just a little, betraying the absolute shock vibrating through my chest. "Mr. Sterling, I assure you, I am perfectly sound. My family is dealing with a highly volatile personal situation because I refuse to continue funding my brother's lifestyle. They are angry that I have set a firm financial and emotional boundary. I am so deeply sorry that they dragged this company into it. I am completely humiliated." "You do not need to apologize," Mr. Sterling said, and the sudden warmth that entered his voice almost made my chest cave in. It was the first time an older male figure had spoken to me with genuine respect in a very long time. "Joshua, I have been in corporate management for 30 years. I know a sabotage attempt when I hear one." His story was wildly inconsistent, and quite frankly, his temperament was highly unprofessional. I did not entertain his claims for a single second. "But I needed you to be aware of the exact lengths your family is going to behind your back." "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I don't even know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. We have flagged your employee file," Mr. Sterling confirmed. "Your father, your mother, and your brother have all been placed on a strict security block at all our corporate locations, both here in London and back in the States. If they attempt to contact us again, our legal team will handle it as corporate harassment. We are very much looking forward to having you here in London, Joshua. See you on Monday. Safe travels." When the call ended, I slowly lowered the phone. A cold, hard realization settled over my shoulders, freezing out any lingering guilt I might have had. Blood means absolutely nothing. Blood is just biology. Loyalty, respect, and basic human decency are choices, and my family had made their choice very clear. They would rather see me unemployed, broken, and labeled insane than see me independent and successful. 2 days later, I boarded a red-eye flight to Heathrow. I sat in my window seat, watching the American coastline disappear beneath a thick blanket of clouds, and I didn't look back once. Arriving in London felt like stepping onto a completely different planet. The air was crisp, smelling of rain and old stone architecture. My company had set me up in a beautiful modern flat in a quiet, upscale neighborhood. For the first 2 weeks, I threw myself entirely into my new role. I met my new team. I started organizing massive European summits. I drank strong coffee in tiny cafes, and I let the fast-paced rhythm of the city wash the past away. I was sleeping better. I was smiling more. I felt light. But toxic families do not just let their favorite punching bag walk away without a fight. When the direct attack fails, they send in the flying monkeys. It was a Sunday morning. I was sitting at a small corner bakery near the River Thames, drinking a flat white and reading the local newspaper. My phone buzzed on the wooden table. It was a text message from a number I hadn't thought to block yet. My Aunt Mary. Growing up, Aunt Mary was the nice one. She was the one who slipped me a $20 bill on my birthday when my parents conveniently forgot. She was the one who bought me ice cream when Landon got to go to the amusement park without me because I had to stay home and mow the lawn. I always thought she was different. I always thought she quietly saw the unfairness in our house. The text was a massive block of text. "Joshua, this has gone far enough. Your mother is completely devastated. She cries every single day in her bedroom. Landon's life is in absolute shambles because of what you did at the wedding. Victoria's family is demanding an annulment, and Victoria has already hired a vicious lawyer for the divorce. She is even fighting for custody of the dog. I know you were hurt, honey, but a good nephew and a good son would know when to forgive and forget. You need to call your mother and apologize. Stop being so stubborn and cruel. Come home and help your brother fix this mess. Family is all we have." I read the message 3 times. The old Joshua, the one who desperately craved any scrap of validation from his relatives, would have felt a massive wave of panic and guilt. He would have drafted a long, highly emotional paragraph trying to explain his side of the story. He would have begged Aunt Mary to understand that I was the victim, that they stole from me, that they lied about me. The new Joshua just felt deeply, profoundly tired. She didn't care about the thousands of dollars they manipulated out of me. She didn't care about the lies they told Victoria's parents. She didn't care that my father tried to get me fired from my job. She didn't care about my pain at all. She just wanted the boat to stop rocking. She wanted me to get back in my designated box so the family could pretend everything was perfect again at Thanksgiving. To her, my compliance was more important than my mental health. I didn't reply. I didn't justify myself. I didn't type a single word. I pressed the small information icon in the top right corner of the screen, scrolled to the very bottom, and hit block caller. Just like that, the last string tying me to my childhood snapped. Felt incredibly, wonderfully liberating. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought an ocean, a blocked number, and a 9-hour time difference would be a thick enough wall. I vastly underestimated their sheer, delusional entitlement. A month later, on a dreary, rainy Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting in a state-of-the-art, glass-walled conference room on the 4th floor of our London headquarters. I was in the middle of a high-stakes pitch meeting with a major corporate client, pointing to a projection screen, when my assistant, Laura, knocked sharply on the glass door. Laura was usually the picture of British composure, but right now, she looked visibly pale and incredibly stressed. She stepped into the room, bypassing the clients, and walked directly over to me. She leaned down to whisper in my ear, her voice tight. "Joshua, I am so sorry to interrupt. Security just called from the front reception desk. There are 3 people in the main lobby downstairs. They are demanding to see you. They are causing quite a scene and claim it is a massive family emergency." My pen stopped moving across my notepad. The ink bled into the paper. Did they give names? Landon, Robert, and Susan. My parents and my brother. I felt the blood drain from my face, followed instantly by a rush of pure adrenaline. They had actually flown across the Atlantic Ocean. They had tracked down my corporate office address, walked through the front doors of a highly secure building, and demanded access. They thought they could ambush me at my place of work, corner me in a public setting where I would be forced to keep quiet to save face, and force a confrontation. They thought the rules of basic societal decency didn't apply to them. "Excuse me for just one moment, everyone," I said to my clients, forcing a polite, professional smile. "A minor logistical issue has come up downstairs. I will be right back." I walked out of the conference room and went straight to the elevator bank. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel the old, familiar childhood dread. I felt a cold, hyper-focused, absolute anger. When the silver elevator doors opened to the grand marble lobby of the ground floor, I saw them immediately. They were standing by the front reception desk, directly in front of the electronic security turnstiles. They were dripping wet from the London rain, looking entirely out of place among the sleek suits and modern decor. My mother looked disheveled, her hair plastered to her forehead. Landon looked frantic, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. My father was leaning over the reception desk, his face bright red, aggressively pointing his finger at the stoic security guard. "I am his father," my dad was shouting, his voice echoing loudly off the polished marble walls, drawing stares from employees passing by. "This is a life-or-death family emergency. You will open those gates and let me through right now, or I will have your job. Sir, as I have told you 3 times, you are on the restricted entry list." The security guard replied calmly, stepping out from behind the desk, his hand resting near his radio. "You need to lower your voice and step back from the desk." I walked slowly across the lobby. The sharp, rhythmic sound of my leather shoes clicking against the floor made Landon stop pacing and turn around. "Josh!" Landon yelled, pointing at me as if he had just caught a fleeing criminal. "Tell these idiots to let us in." My mother gasped, dropping her purse and running toward the glass security turnstiles. She pressed her hands against the barrier, her face twisting into a mask of pure desperation. Joshua! Oh my God! Look at you. Please just come here. Just talk to us. We came all this way. I stopped about 10 feet away from the glass barrier, keeping a safe distance. I put my hands in my pockets and just looked at them. They looked so incredibly small. They looked like people who were used to getting their way by screaming the loudest in a tiny pond, suddenly realizing they were standing in an ocean where they had absolutely zero power. You have absolutely no right to be here, I said, my voice carrying easily across the space, cold and unwavering. We are your family, my father barked, stepping up next to my mother, his fists clenched at his sides. You blocked all our numbers. You ran away like a coward. Landon's life is a complete disaster because of your little stunt. And you are going to stand there and take responsibility like a man. Responsibility. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Landon lied to his rich in-laws. He claimed he paid for a wedding that I funded with my own salary. He uninvited me to keep his pathetic secret. I took my money back. Everything that happened after that is a direct result of his own arrogance and his own actions. Victoria filed for divorce, Landon screamed, his voice cracking, completely ignoring the fact that 20 people in the lobby were watching him. He grabbed the top of the glass turnstile as if he wanted to vault over it. Her parents found out the truth about the money. They forced her to leave. Her father hired a ruthless corporate lawyer, and they are taking absolutely everything. I had to move back into my old childhood bedroom at Mom and Dad's house. Are you happy now? Are you satisfied that you ruined my life? I don't care, Landon, I said, and as the words left my mouth, the absolute, undeniable truth of them hit me right in the chest. I really didn't care. Your marriage was built on a massive lie. Your entire life is built on taking credit for other people's hard work. The bill finally came due. That is not my problem. Joshua, please, my mother sobbed, her tears leaving wet streaks on the glass barrier. She clasped her hands together as if praying to me. He's your brother. He needs your help. He needs money for his legal fees. We spent thousands of dollars from our savings on plane tickets just to come here and fix this. Please, let's just go get a cup of coffee. Let's act like a family. You lost the right to use that word, I told her, looking her directly in the eyes. I didn't blink. You lost that right when you told me to sit quietly at home while Landon spent my money to impress his in-laws. And Dad, you lost that right when you called my boss and tried to get me fired by claiming I was insane. My father physically flinched. He stepped back, his eyes widening. He clearly didn't think I knew about that phone call. He opened his mouth to formulate a lie, to deny it. But before he could speak a single word, the elevator doors opened behind me. Mr. Sterling stepped out into the lobby. He took one look at the situation, at my screaming family and the gathering crowd, adjusted the cuffs of his tailored suit jacket, and walked over to stand right beside me. He looked at my family through the glass barrier with the kind of wealthy, authoritative corporate disdain that only a high-level British executive can truly master. Is there a problem here, Joshua? Mr. Sterling asked quietly, though his eyes never left my father's red face. No, Mr. Sterling, I replied, my voice steady. They were just leaving. Mr. Sterling nodded sharply to the head of security. Escort them off the premises immediately. If they step foot on the pavement outside our corporate doors again, call the local authorities and press charges. You can't do this, Landon yelled, his face twisting in genuine panic as two large security guards stepped toward him, grabbing him by the arms. Josh, don't walk away from us. You owe me. You're supposed to help me. Goodbye, I said. I turned my back on them. I walked back to the elevator. As the doors slid shut, the very last thing I saw was my father trying to physically push a security guard twice his size and failing miserably, while my mother wept on the floor and Landon stood frozen, staring in absolute shock at the empty space where his reliable, obedient little brother used to be. They didn't try to contact me after that day. They flew back to America, finally, painfully realizing that their control over me was permanently, irreparably broken. 6 months passed in a blur of healing and success. The harsh London winter faded into a mild, beautiful spring. I thrived in my new role as director. I received a massive performance bonus that allowed me to buy a beautiful flat overlooking a green park. I made brilliant, supportive friends. I traveled to Paris and Rome on the weekends. I built a life that was entirely my own, totally free from the heavy, suffocating weight of being my brother's keeper. I rarely thought about them anymore. The deep, jagged wound they had left in me had finally scarred over. But life has a very funny way of bringing the past back to your doorstep just when you think you've finally outrun it. It was a chilly Tuesday evening in late October. I was wrapping up my work for the day, organizing some files on my desk, when my personal cell phone rang. The caller ID showed a local London area code. Assuming it was a food delivery driver or a colleague calling from a different department, I answered casually. "Hello." There was a heavy, shaking breath on the other end of the line. "Josh, please don't hang up." I froze. My hand gripped the edge of my desk. The voice was older, rougher, and completely drained of its usual arrogant, golden boy swagger. But I knew exactly who it was. "Landon," I said. My voice was completely flat, devoid of any emotion. "How did you get this number?" "I begged Carter," Landon replied quickly, his words stumbling over each other. "I swore to him I wasn't going to start anything. I promised him I just needed to talk to you. I'm in London, Josh. I flew in this morning. I'm sitting at the pub down the street from your office. The one with the dark green awning. Please, just give me 10 minutes. If you walk away after 10 minutes, I will never bother you again for the rest of my natural life. I promise you." I looked out my office window at the gray, overcast sky. I debated hanging up right then and there. I owed him absolutely nothing. But there was a small part of me, a quiet, lingering ghost of the little brother I used to be, that needed to see this through to the very bitter end. I needed to see him just one last time, face to face, to prove to my own subconscious that he held absolutely no power over me anymore. 10 minutes, I said coldly. "And if you raise your voice even once, I walk out." I grabbed my trench coat and took the elevator down. The pub was only a block away. It was dark inside, smelling of stale ale, fried fish and damp wood. I spotted him immediately, sitting in a back booth in the shadows, staring down at a pint of beer he hadn't even touched. When I walked closer, the sheer physical change in him made me stop dead in my tracks. Landon had always been the handsome, perfectly groomed golden boy. He was always wearing expensive designer clothes, radiating a smug, untouchable confidence. The man sitting in the booth looked like a ghost. He had lost at least 20 or 30 pounds. His hair was visibly thinning at the crown. His face was incredibly pale, and there were dark, heavy bags under his eyes. He wore a cheap, frayed sweater that looked like it hadn't been washed in a week. The stress of the last year, the public humiliation, and the divorce had completely hollowed him out. He looked exactly like a man who had lost everything. I slid into the leather booth across from him. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't order a drink. I just looked at him, my expression blank. "Your 10 minutes start right now," I said. Landon looked up at me. His eyes were bloodshot. "Thank you for coming," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Get to the point, Landon. I have places to be." He swallowed hard, looking down at his shaking hands. "Victoria is gone. The divorce was officially finalized last month. Her father's lawyer completely destroyed me in court. They took the apartment. They took the savings. They made sure everyone in our social circle, everyone at the country club, knew exactly what happened at the wedding. No one will hire me back home because of the rumors. I'm 34 years old. I live in my childhood bedroom, and my life is completely over." "That is a very sad story," I said, my voice showing zero sympathy. I didn't flinch. "Did you fly all the way across the ocean just to give me a depressing update on your karma?" He flinched as if I had struck him. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. His hand was trembling so violently he could barely grasp the paper. He pulled out a crisp, white envelope and slid it slowly across the scratched wooden table toward me. "What is this?" I asked, looking at the envelope but not making a move to touch it. "It's a cashier's check," Landon said, a tear finally escaping his eye. "For exactly $25,000. Took me 8 months to scrape it together. I sold my car. I liquidated the tiny bit of stock I had left. I begged and borrowed the rest from an old college friend. It's the exact amount you lost in cancellation fees when you pulled the plug on the wedding." I stared at the white envelope resting on the wood. The money I had burned to buy my freedom. "I know it doesn't fix what I did to you," Landon continued, tears now freely spilling over his eyelashes and tracking down his pale cheeks. "I know I was a monster to you, Josh. I spent my whole life taking advantage of you because Mom and Dad let me. Because I knew you would always fix my messes. I was so incredibly selfish. I lied to Victoria's parents because I was ashamed that I couldn't provide for her, and I threw you under the bus to save my own pathetic ego. I am so sorry. I'm so deeply sorry. Please, just take the money." For a long moment, the pub went completely quiet. The rain started tapping gently against the window pane beside us. I looked at the broken, miserable man sitting across from me. Part of me, a very old, very buried part of me, wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to reach across the table, accept his tearful apology, and hug the big brother I had always wanted to have. But I had spent 32 years observing Landon. I knew how he operated. I knew how his mind worked, and I knew how my parents had wired him to think. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, studying his face. "Why now, Landon?" I asked quietly. He blinked, hurriedly wiping his eyes with the back of his sleeve. "What do you mean?" "I mean, why now? You didn't care about my money when you uninvited me to the wedding. You didn't care about my feelings when you ambushed me in my office lobby 6 months ago. You didn't care when Dad tried to get me fired. So what suddenly changed? Did you just wake up one morning with a sudden, magical burst of moral clarity?" Landon looked away. His jaw tightened just a fraction of an inch. He picked nervously at the wet paper label on his beer glass. "Look at me," I demanded, my voice hardening. He slowly met my eyes. The guilt in them wasn't the guilt of someone who had deeply hurt his brother. It was the frantic, trapped guilt of someone who had been caught. "I've been going to therapy," Landon mumbled, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Since the divorce. I was drinking too much. I hit rock bottom. My therapist, he told me that the only way I can start rebuilding my life, the only way I can get past my severe depression, is to make a formal amends list. To clear my slate." He paused, taking a ragged breath. "And the judge in the divorce court, Victoria's lawyer, brought up the wedding debt during the asset division to show my complete lack of financial responsibility. My own lawyer advised me that if I ever want to look credible on paper again, if I ever want to rebuild my credit or not look like a complete fraud in future legal proceedings, I need to show documented proof that I settled my outstanding moral and financial debts." I leaned back in the booth. A harsh, cynical laugh escaped my lips. Couldn't help it. It was too perfect. It was the ultimate Landon move. "You didn't fly here because you couldn't sleep at night knowing how badly you hurt me," I said, pointing a finger directly at his chest. "You flew here because your therapist gave you a homework assignment, and your lawyer told you it would make you look better in front of a judge. You are still making this entirely about you, Landon. You just want to hand me a check so you can walk out of this pub feeling like a good person. You want to buy a clean conscience so you can sleep at night." Landon's face crumpled. "Josh, please. That's not completely true. I am sorry. I swear to God I'm sorry." "Maybe you are," I said, standing up and towering over him. "Maybe hitting rock bottom finally knocked some actual sense into you. But your healing journey is not my responsibility. Your court records are not my problem. You don't get to use me as a stepping stone to fix your own life anymore." I reached down and picked up the white envelope. I slid it into my coat pocket. "I'm taking this check," I told him, looking down at his pathetic, tear-stained face. "Not because I forgive you. Not because this makes us even. I'm taking it because this is my hard-earned money, and you owe it to me. But this is the absolute end. We are done. Don't call me again. Don't text Carter. Don't come looking for me. I sincerely wish you the best in fixing your broken life, Landon, but you are going to do it completely without me. I didn't wait for him to reply. I didn't want to hear another excuse. I turned around and walked out of the pub. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped out into the cool, dark London evening. The rain had stopped. The street lamps were glowing warmly against the wet pavement, reflecting the vibrant life of the city. I put my hand in my pocket, feeling the crisp edge of the envelope. $25,000. The exact price of the hardest, most painful lesson I ever had to learn. I took a deep breath of the cold air, turned down the street, and walked toward my home, leaving my brother sitting alone in the dark, exactly where he belonged. Before I sign off today, I want to take a moment to talk about what this whole nightmare actually taught me. Because looking back on it, walking away from my family wasn't an act of cruelty. It was an act of profound self-preservation. We are taught from a very young age that family is everything. We are conditioned by society to believe that sharing a bloodline means you have to endure endless disrespect, manipulation, and pain. But that is a toxic, dangerous lie. Blood simply makes you related. Loyalty, respect, and mutual care are what actually make you a family. My parents and my brother viewed my kindness as a weakness. They viewed my success as a community resource that they were entitled to drain. If you are sitting there right now watching this video, and you are giving everything you have to people who only hide you in the shadows when it suits their narrative, I need you to hear this loud and clear. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to set a boundary. You are allowed to be the villain in their story if it means becoming the hero of your own. Taking your energy back from people who exploit you isn't selfish. It is survival. You cannot buy a seat at a table where they never intended to give you a plate. Which part of this lesson resonated with you the most? Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic family member to save yourself and protect your peace? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or simply type the word "good" so I know you found value in my story and the lessons it brings. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me know I'm not alone. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.